It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we begin a Tuesday, Gary, good morning.
Good morning. Well, the ceasefire was expected to start an hour ago, and Fox reporting that sirens were sounding in Israel after midnight when the start of the anticipated ceasefire was expected to take effect. Sirens sounding in Israel due to a missile launch from Iran. The IDF wrote on X at around 12:20 a.m. Eastern Time. The start of the ceasefire was supposed to begin at midnight, and Israel would start the ceasefire then 12 hours later before the end of the conflict was set to happen at midnight Eastern Time on Wednesday. Now, Iranian state TV reported the ceasefire remains in place, although Israel has not confirmed the report.
All right, so it's interesting, as you just mentioned, Iranian television reporting that a ceasefire has begun. They are reporting, too, that there were 4 killed in a missile strike on Beersheba at a building there. And so that would be in Israel. And it was the Iranian ballistic missile that struck this building there in Beersheba. Again, you've got a number who are wounded and 4 killed, which is being reported widely, but by the Times of Israel and Jerusalem Post both. Jerusalem Post is saying at least 20 wounded. Now, then you go back to, when I go back to the Times of Israel, this just came across a few minutes ago. Civilians no longer need to stay close to bomb shelters, Homefront Command says.
Then they rescinded that, I saw.
Yeah, did they? Okay, this is only 4 minutes old, so the Times of Israel.
Okay,
are they saying
maybe they did it? Then they've gone back and forth.
Well, I was wondering because it doesn't make sense after the Beersheba strike, and you've got 4 dead there. Why you would put that out there? Why the Homefront Command put that out there after that? If that is the case, it could be the Times of Israel does not have that correct, but it is their latest update here in the coverage, the live coverage of the news of the war. But certainly the world is waiting to see if, I don't know, the ceasefire is real.
Israel issued 6 alerts warning, I think you mentioned this, of separate waves of Iranian missiles overnight and into Tuesday morning local time in the hours before the ceasefire between the two countries was due to come into effect. Well, that story contradicts itself because it was supposed to start local time at midnight. Mm-hmm. So that first sentence contradicts itself from CNN. Air raid, right?
Yeah, right.
It says, make sure I get this right. Israel issued 6 alert warnings of separate waves of Iranian missiles overnight and into Tuesday morning local time in the hours before a fragile ceasefire between the two countries was due to come into effect. Now, that wasn't written right because into Tuesday morning local time, that's when the ceasefire was supposed to start for Iran. And then 12 hours later, Israel. Air raid sirens repeatedly sounded across Israel as Iran fired multiple barrages of missiles towards the country, killing at least 4 throughout the night and into the morning. Residents across Israel were repeatedly told to take shelter as incoming missiles were detected by Israeli air defenses. Shortly after some residents left their bunkers, sirens blared out again, instructing them to return. The waves of missiles came after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that a ceasefire had been announced between Iran and Israel. It was interesting because I was watching something on CNN, and it was the anchor was saying, well, we don't have this confirmed. And then they went to the reporter who said, our sources say this thing actually started before we went after the nuclear sites. And Qatar, this is what the CNN reporter said, Qatar was negotiating. And doing a ton of it. Okay, now 17 minutes ago from CNN, Iranian and Israeli media channels are reporting that the ceasefire between their two nations has begun, but confusion still swirls over the ceasefire, precise details, and timing.
And that was what I had just brought from the Times of Israel. And so you look at their timeline, basically, on the stories that are breaking. It's one right after the other. So as we get down to or into now this ceasefire for Iran, again, as you just mentioned, but also being reported by the Times of Israel and other sources, that Iranian television says the ceasefire has begun. So the question again would be, are we going to see that in the coming hours? Are we going? Is Iran done after this strike on Beersheba, where 4 were killed and they're reporting at least 20 are injured, and also the report that civilians no longer need to stay close to bomb shelters in Israel. Homefront Command says that is from the Times of Israel. Don't know. I mean, I guess the question would be, certainly Israel has better intel than we do, but are they confident that it's over? That the ceasefire by Iran is going to be honored.
Well, the interesting thing is, it's both the media they claim, at least CNN's claiming that the ceasefire is on from both sides, but officially, as you see reported, whether it's Fox or CNN or whomever, Israel has not responded. Why hasn't Israel? You would think Israel would be the first to respond,
right,
to it,
right, officially,
not in the media. If they're announcing
that makes me wonder again about Homefront Command saying civilians. Well, it's being reported, but by Times of Israel, that Homefront Command says civilians no longer need to stay close to bomb shelters. Is that an indication that Israel believes that Iran is going to honor this here as we get into the first hours of this ceasefire? I don't know.
Yeah, well, like I said, they've gone back and forth on that.
Yeah.
So who knows whether that's, they thought that hours ago, or they said come back out again, then they said go back in again. So.
Well, and quite honestly, it seems like this has gone on for a year, but the other day they actually said they may be at a point very soon where they can say that civilians no longer need to be near bomb shelters and certain alerts could be rescinded. But again, I questioned that then.
That was based on that they were running out of missiles or missile launchers?
In fact, it was alongside the story about the same time, and maybe even part of the story. You and I have been covering so much, and including so much of the coverage from international sources. But there was a point when Israel was saying they no longer have the ability to launch 100 missiles at a time.
Oh, okay.
And so it would be, and at that point they thought maybe 20 or 30. There was a strike. In fact,
after that had come out, it was 27 that they had shot off.
Yeah, and so that's where they, again, we're talking, it may be soon. And maybe the assessment was that if they're running out of if their ability is diminished or almost completely gone to launch missiles, then very soon we might be able to issue that notice that people wouldn't have to stay near bomb shelters. But again, we'll see where this goes in the next hours. I mean, it's really just begun here, this ceasefire between Israel and Iran.
If it's begun.
If it's actually in effect. So the president yesterday, President Trump, seemed confident in everybody he was talking to. There were reporters. You know, one thing that's amazing is, I think it was Jonathan Carl the other day that said, I called him and he picked up. He talked to me on the phone. And so the president has been really trying to be, and I think there's a couple of things going on there. But it's you want the disinformation to work for you. We saw that play out on Saturday before the U.S. bombed those sites. You want the media to be as friendly to you in case you need them for that. Any other disinformation campaigns. So I guess the president being transparent, in my opinion, really isn't anything new. But in moments like this, there are, you have to wonder how much talking we know that everybody was, lips sealed on Saturday leading up to the bombing of those sites, which is what you have to do. But then after that, the president went back to his normal talking to the media at every turn. And there were other reporters yesterday during the day on Monday talking about, they had been in communication with the president. And he said this on the ceasefire thing. And so he seemed, according to them, and according to his own post on True Social, he seemed highly confident. Now, the question is it overconfidence? Is it hyperbole? Because this president is known, breaking news, for hyperbole. And so I don't see that in a situation like this.
You look at the Jerusalem Post here. I mean, you look at the headlines and you say, just the front page, you say, I'm not sure what's going on.
Right.
5 killed, at least 20 wounded as Iran fires missile salvo at Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Iran's foreign minister claims they stopped attacks after Trump announces ceasefire with Israel. Tehran fired its last round of missiles before ceasefire, the Iranian state news media says. This is from the Jerusalem Post. Qatar mediated between Israel and Iran to reach a ceasefire, sources tell the Post. Iranian official tells CNN Iran never received the ceasefire proposal, or Israel yet to confirm Iran's ceasefire. Netanyahu asked ministers to avoid comment.
Right.
So I'm reading that from the Jerusalem Post. So if you're sitting in Israel right now, you're like, I don't know.
Okay.
If you're reading the Jerusalem Post.
Right. Which is why on the, from the Times of Israel, saying with this notice that and as you mentioned, it's kind of been back and forth in recent hours, this notice that the public in Israel may not need to stay close to bomb shelters, doesn't need to stay close to bomb shelters. Here's the ultimate point is nobody trusts Iran. Because the way the language was, or I guess the approach by the president yesterday, being so confident in the ceasefire thing, and I thought to myself, are we going to learn at some point the Ayatollah has been exiled or something's gone on, that they have different leadership in Iran? Because the point is nobody can trust Iran. Certainly Bibi Netanyahu does not trust Iran, and most importantly doesn't trust them on a ceasefire. It doesn't matter what Qatar does. They have few friends. They have really no friends in the Middle East. When it comes to Israel, they only have the U.S. in terms of a true friend, and that just depends on which administration is in power. And currently, we are, of course, strong allies and support Israel. But I don't know that Netanyahu would trust a situation like that. So I would expect them to be very quiet on this situation.
U.S. President Donald Trump, this is Jerusalem Post 2 minutes ago. U.S. President Donald Trump, the ceasefire is now in effect. Please do not violate it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So again, there was the one story from Fox News that says Israel reports 6th wave of incoming missile barrage from Iran as ceasefire goes into effect, and they make it sound like the ceasefire has gone into effect and this 6th wave is coming after. Sirens sounding in Israel due to the missile launch from Iran. They wrote at 12:20 Eastern time. Now, how long does it take for the missiles to get over? Did they fire them right at 12 and at 12:20 it went off? You would think if they fired them from Iran, the sirens would go off right after they launch.
Right. Yeah.
So, and there's no update yet, but we'll be looking for an update
Well,
you know,
and
over there as
again, you have to wonder about the psychology, given how they were able to pull off the bombing and the disinformation campaign leading up to the bombing over the weekend. You have to wonder about the psychology here, which is why, again, the announcement of the ceasefire by the president yesterday and it seemed, even though he's usually overconfident and usually includes a lot of hyperbole in what he announces, on something like this, I don't see that happening. My question would be, is this one of those, hey, we're going to announce a ceasefire and Iran wants it. This is the last stop. This is the last chance. We're going to announce the ceasefire. We're going to, because the attack on Qatar, on the U.S. base, clearly this was it's our obligatory response to the bombings of our sites, so we're just going to send these over. They had called Qatar ahead of time. They actually gave them a heads up. Qatar gave us a heads up because it's our base. And the question would be, is there something else going on here where they're being, it's like, okay, if they don't abide by this, then it's fully on. I don't think that would work well politically for the president, but I don't think it would clearly work well for Iran.
Well, the reason, the evidence I look at that the president wasn't throwing out hyperbole is nobody has denied that the ceasefire has in effect and been agreed to.
No, that's it. It doesn't feel like hyperbole here.
Right.
He involves it all the time, but it doesn't feel like that. So,
because neither side has said no, that's not true.
Right. No, they haven't.
Right.
And so the question would be, then, what is this? Because we also didn't hear really from either side that, we've agreed to end the war in this big celebratory fashion that the president was portraying on Monday.
866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Every driver knows the cost of replacing tires is a major expense. What if you could save on tire costs without sacrificing performance or safety? Consider retreads, a sustainable, cost-effective way to rack up your miles. The lower price tag of retreads might make it feel like you're sacrificing performance, but many of the quality retreads available today have proven to perform comparable to new tires. Plus, dependable tire performance also has to do with choosing the right retreads for your application and adopting a tire maintenance routine. Determining the position in which your retreads will be placed and what application they'll be used in should be the first steps you take when purchasing tires, whether new or retreads.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. 9 minutes ago, U.S. From CNN, U.S. President Donald Trump says the ceasefire between Israel is now into effect. Please do not violate it, he wrote.
Mm-hmm.
So we still haven't gotten anything. Latest strikes. Israel said it identified multiple missiles launched from Iran early Tuesday morning, with one slamming into a residential building. I don't know, though, if they're talking early morning their time, not early morning our time. So, Qatar helped, Qatar helped, helped broker the ceasefire by mediating talks with Iran. Sources says Israel agreed to the ceasefire deal on the condition that Iran stops its attacks in their country. A senior White House official told CNN Iran agreed to those terms, the source said.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Friday Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So that I'm still just looking at just very quickly download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. Just the Jerusalem Post article that I still look at now. It's at least a half hour old. Let me just see when that came out. Updated 8:03 a.m. their time. So that 7 a.m. their time is when the ceasefire started. Iran continued to launch missiles into Israel past the 7 a.m. local time when the ceasefire announced by Trump was intended to take effect. So if that is true, they've already broken the ceasefire. Now, whether they're stopping now, I haven't seen anything since that, which would that would have been over an hour ago. When they put that on, so right. we just don't know. But I'm going to assume, since from what I see right now, there is no other stories of any other missiles coming in.
No,
there's nothing about a seventh wave,
right?
Coming in, and nothing from Trump here. And like I said, the last thing is Trump saying the ceasefire is in effect. Don't fire.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. It was what a weird day it was yesterday. I mean, I've never, the response was so public, and when Trump is thanking Iran for
and then the God bless Iran, God bless Israel, God bless the USA, and it's like careful on that. That's because here's the thing. Too soon. When it comes to Iran, it's not trust but verify. It's, you really shouldn't trust, only verify. It's the everybody understands the history, which, again, I thought, well, I guess that's assuming that the Ayatollah is still in control, which we have no reason to believe that he's not at this point. My question is, it just seems so bizarre, as you pointed out. Everything seemed so weird yesterday. I thought, it seems like a great deal of confidence in Iran by the president just 2 days after he bombed him. I've got to wonder here if there's something else going on. Or if he's just in a mode of, look, let's keep encouraging the ceasefire. And they do have, I don't know, a handshake deal, the framework of a ceasefire, whatever you want to call it, and that you put that out, as you say, it was so public, it was everywhere. I mean, it was nonstop from the president. And then if Iran violates that, all right, clear justification for Israel to go in and finish the deed. And again, you can read into that whatever you want, but I read into it as taking out the Ayatollah, taking out Iranian leadership. Now, again, I'm not intel.
I don't get that.
You don't get what?
I don't get that there's any indication that they're taking out Iranian leadership.
No. Did you hear everything that I said? That if Iran isn't playing by the ceasefire, then Israel goes in and finishes the job. And finish the job, you can read into that what you will, but I read into the words finish the job as take out the Ayatollah, which is what Israel has been wanting to do. Now, I don't know that that's the case. That's not what I'm saying. It's that, are you putting up this, hey, this is your last chance, very last chance at peace thing? And we're seeing it play out now that, according to the timeline and everything that's happened in the attack on Beersheba, with 4 killed, actually some reporting now 5 killed, and dozens injured. Well, Iran didn't abide by that timeline, but is it over now? And if it's not, what happens to Iran? Because it will be the retaliation from Israel and quite possibly the U.S.
The only reason as I said,
huge.
Still I don't view that as a possibility. Right, I could be wrong, but I don't view that as a possibility now because the last thing that Trump would want right now is for Israel to take out the Ayatollah. I think you would see massive response back to try to root out.
Yeah, I don't think he wants them to.
Right.
I mean, I really don't.
And that's why I think Israel won't do that right now if they continued it. My point was, if it was just that barrage that was a couple of minutes after the ceasefire, it's like, for example, we all wondered, it doesn't matter whether they warned us, that they were going to, earlier in the day, go after the air base in Qatar. It's the fact that they did it, and would we respond? And Trump said, no, we're not going to respond to it. This was weak. It was horrible and everything. I mean, it actually looked bad for, if they were trying to save face, they didn't save face. But I view what happened, if that's the only thing, if they continue to fire at weapons and do it for days afterwards when there's supposed to be a ceasefire and keep breaking it, I could see it at that point. I just don't see it at this point.
The word yesterday, too, when it became that it was going to be an imminent strike on Qatar, that there was also belief that there was going to be a strike on American interests in Iraq. That didn't play out. The ultimate point here goes back to the fact that you can't trust Iran on anything. And where we are right now, why do you trust Iran on this? Except for the very real possibility that they're out. They have nothing left to fire. They have a few missiles, but really they're on their knees, and they've got nothing to defend themselves.
We knew that they took out the capability where they couldn't fire off 100 missiles at a time, and we were talking about that at the point where they shot off 27 missiles. This goes back a couple of days ago, and the report was that they've knocked out 50% of the missile launchers, the ability to launch the missiles. They have missiles, they just can't launch them. And so you and I just said, well, if you've taken out 50% and they continue to do it over the next couple of days, how long will it take to get rid of as close to 100% as you can do? And if I was Israel, I would want to do that first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you want, and maybe that is what brings about this really almost solid confidence by the president when he announced the ceasefire, and also as he talked about it throughout the day on Monday, is that they know they've got really nothing left. They got a handful of missiles, and they have a very limited way of delivering those missiles. Which, by the way, could have been clear and evident in that attack on Qatar, on the U.S. base on Qatar. That, okay, this is about what they're capable of. It still presents a danger in that region, and especially to Israel. But, again, we have to think about Americans in that region and American interests in that region. So, what does Intel know? The stories about Mossad and how they've been able to get really deep access into Iran are pretty amazing. I have confidence based on what we have learned about that, but also based on the history of Mossad when it comes to Iran. I have confidence that they've got a real head count on what Iran has.
Well,
in terms of weaponry.
I think they've been. I agree that with the U.S. assessment that they've been seriously depleted, and with the Israeli intelligence assessment that, and this goes back a few days ago, that the vast majority of, well, we saw it. They didn't respond at all. They know they're completely vulnerable. Had the discussion yesterday with somebody. They had over 100 airplanes in the air. Nobody knew it. Nobody in the world figured it out as it was going on. Nobody.
Right.
And if somebody did, they didn't tell anyone.
Right.
If China or Russia knew it was going on, they didn't say anything. But the U.S. military is making the case that no one saw anything, and the misdirection worked. oh, okay, there are the B-2 bombers flying over the Pacific. Actually, we're sending everybody over the Atlantic.
Well,
and they went in, and then they got after. Think about this: after they blew up the missile sites, they turned around, and there wasn't, from what we know, any missile, any anti-aircraft, nothing, just being thrown into the air whatsoever. I mean, the air superiority was 100%, and so you are so extremely vulnerable right now. You've got, if you're Iran, you have nothing. You have the ability to launch, some missiles and maybe strike some residential areas, but you don't gain anything defensively or offensively when it comes to actually winning the war by doing that.
The story the other day that the one Russian official that said a number of nations would love to provide Iran with nuclear warheads. It wasn't Putin that said that, but another Russian official. But then the story yesterday from the Wall Street Journal, why Russia is giving Iran the cold shoulder after Israel's attack. But you look at basically the behavior by Putin, and now we're pretty deep into this, days deep into this, and it's all been just rhetoric in terms of the support of Russia gives Iran. No real support for Iran, and that's indicative, again, further indication of what we talked about yesterday, and that's the international consensus that Iran can't have nukes, that everything is on Iran. So beyond diminishing or maybe depleting completely eventually their ability to strike and their weaponry, then does Iran realize, all right, this is going to be our existence? Because if the entire world believes we're going to go back to work in labs, we're going to start rebuilding our labs and putting the nuke thing back on a timeline here, they're going to, trade-wise, they're going to choke us out. And we're going to be the pariah. And if we don't have help from Russia, China, and friends that we've had for a long time, then are we in deep, deep trouble? Could we become the next North Korea? And that's the Iran.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You said we.
Yeah. I'm saying Iran saying that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So if they're looking at that with that kind of, oh my gosh, the international consensus is clear, which means it's going to be impossible on trade except for, I don't know, a Venezuela and a Cuba, maybe. Who's going to buy our oil going forward? China is still in the game. If Russia and China are giving, again, Iran the cold shoulder here, is this part of a decision by Iranian leadership? Okay, we're done. We don't have anything left. Not only do we not have the weaponry, but we risk being the pariah. We risk being the next North Korea.
You and I both said that something has changed drastically here over the since this has all started, with the reaction, whether it's the countries around the world, whether it's Russia, whether it's China. Something's different here. It's as if people are like, okay, look, not that Russia or China are friends of the United States, and not that they won't attempt to get influence of other countries against the United States. I sort of think everybody has just given up on Iran because they're such a loose cannon, and nobody had any idea what they would do with the nuclear weapons. And if the Middle East blew up, if they got it and the Middle East started, a war started in the Middle East and nukes were fired, nobody wanted that. And I think it was somebody said it with mutual assured destruction, which we had with the Soviet Union, which is they're not going to fire at us, we're not going to fire at them, because nobody wants to commit suicide. And that the Soviet leaders didn't want to commit suicide, and China's leaders don't want to commit suicide.
Right.
Well, maybe not the case with Iran, and everybody thinks that. 866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Harley Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. We'll have the latest update. This just very quickly coming up on the top of the hour in more specific details. But Israeli officials told the Jerusalem Post that Trump's social media post was not released at the intended time or the manner that it was supposed to be. They don't go into any further detail on that. But the Iranian news agencies and officials on Tuesday rejected Trump's overnight declaration of a complete and total ceasefire, saying no formal truce had been offered and that rocket fire would continue so long as Israel carried out airstrikes.
Yeah.
And we'll get to the specifics of that coming up.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Just scanned CNN and Fox quickly. Neither has this story. This from the Jerusalem Post, 8:45 local time, which means it probably was about, 25 minutes ago. U.S. President Donald Trump declared that the U.S. brokered ceasefire between Israel and Iran went into effect just after 8 a.m. on Tuesday. Israeli officials told the Jerusalem Post that Trump's social media post was not released at the intended time or in the manner that it was supposed to be, but they don't go into any details on it. Then it continues and says, earlier on Tuesday, Iranian news agencies and officials rejected Trump's overnight declaration of a complete and total ceasefire, saying no formal truce had been offered and that the rocket fire would continue so long as Israel carried out the strikes. Now, what we were told was the ceasefire that Iran apparently agreed to, from what we were told, was that would have to go into effect at 7 a.m., I believe it is, their local time.
Yeah.
And then 12 hours later, that the ceasefire would begin first for Iran, and then 12 hours later, it would be Israel.
Here's the post, again, this goes back hours, but something that has been promoted by Iran. The foreign minister there, Araghchi, posted 5 hours ago on X. As of now, there is no agreement in quotations, on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations. However, provided that the Israeli regime stops its illegal, again, this is Iran's foreign minister posting here, aggression against the Iranians, then on the Iranian people, no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, we have no intention to continue our response afterwards. Basically, our interest, if they de-escalate, and there was another quote by him from another source, if they de-escalate, we have an interest in de-escalation, but there is no agreement in place, no formal agreement.
I've got to ask this question. With so much of their military leadership wiped out, does the right hand not know what the left hand is doing in Iran? Is nobody actually making the decisions, which brings up the point that we have said about the Ayatollah. Is he in hiding? Does he not want to communicate with anyone? And we say that because after what the Israelis did to the military leadership, how they set them up and killed the majority of their top military leadership, you know, the stories are out there. The Ayatollah is afraid to answer the phone, afraid to do anything, just staying underground, doesn't want to communicate at all, believing he may be wiped out, which does bring a legitimate question that whoever was negotiating with Qatar, did they have the authority to negotiate and come up with a solution? I think it's a legitimate question when you have so much of the military leadership that's wiped out. And frankly, nobody knows right now the situation internally of where the Ayatollah stands. And so I think that's a legit question to ask. An English language dispatch on the Mehr News Agency, this is from the Jerusalem Post, quoted an unnamed informed source who called Trump's statement a false claim aimed at masking recent American failures. The source insisted that Iran had received no written or verbal proposal from Washington. Well, that might be technically true if they were dealing with Washington through Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
A similar denial ran on the hardline Fars news site, citing what is described as senior security officials. Fars said talk of a ceasefire was intended for domestic U.S. consumption, despite Trump's televised assurance that hostilities would end at 4 a.m. Iran time on Tuesday, which is 7 a.m. Israel time. Iran launched another volley of ballistic missiles towards Israel after the deadline, killing several people overall, according to Israeli emergency services. The foreign minister posted on X at 4:16 a.m. that Iran would hold further defensive measures if Israel stops its illegal aggression. There is no agreement, only Iran's readiness to reciprocate de-escalation. The mixed messaging left the status of the ceasefire unclear. A Rolling Live blog by the Associated Press noted that the contradiction between Iranian state television graphics announcing a truce and the simultaneous missile alerts issued by Israel's Home Front Command, something that you and I questioned earlier on the show. Israel did not immediately acknowledge a reciprocal commitment to halt its strikes. However, military spokesperson confirmed that no Israeli sorties entered Iranian airspace after 4 a.m., saying the Air Force was assessing developments. Again, this all from the Jerusalem Post. Iranian social media channels allied with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard broadcast footage that they claim showed the final salvo against Israel and a strike at the U.S. Air Base in Qatar. None of those claims had been independently verified, but the clips fueled a narrative on the Farsi language Telegram and X Twitter that Trump's ceasefire talk was a face-saving spin. So that's the latest we have from the Jerusalem Post.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. Who's in charge there in Iran? Disinformation from Iran is nothing new. It's part of their tactic. But the question is it also now part of the chaos created by the lack of leadership? Or could it be? And you have to ask that possibility. And I know that I was on the X page of the Ayatollah. By the way, who knows who's actually posting? But this was 9 hours ago, his latest post, or the latest post on this account. Those who know the Iranian people and their history know that the Iranian nation isn't a nation that surrenders. Clearly something regarding the announcement on ceasefire. So, but again, who knows who posted that? Who knows who's controlling that and where the Ayatollah is? It was reported, it's been reported widely that, of course, he's in hiding. He's sheltering in a bunker. They know where he is. Intel, U.S. Intel, Mossad, they know where he is. The question is he actually a target? Does Israel, want to target him? I don't believe the president wants that.
Well, but by this going on, it does, at a point, give Israel the ability to keep taking out the offensive capabilities of Iran. The longer that Iran balks on this, if that's what's happening, again, after the rockets took off from Iran a few minutes after the ceasefire was supposed to go into effect, from what I know, there has been nothing since.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if this was their latest face-saving move. Okay, we'll fire it a couple minutes, after the ceasefire is supposed to begin. To do what? I don't know. I mean, what would be the purpose of doing it? It's not going to help you. You're not going to win the war because of it. You're not even going to win a battle because of it. You killed some Israeli civilians, but how does it further the goals, your military goals in any way, if you give Israel the ability to strike back and take out many more of your rocket launchers? The one thing is when you had, I think when I looked and said, okay, a ceasefire, okay, what does that mean? What are the rules of the ceasefire? And then do you actually come to a peace accord? Is there going to be a peace accord after this? Now, they made it clear, the administration, that if Iran doesn't abide by the ceasefire, then we even do more than we did before.
Right.
If they attack United States interests, again, it's a different story. And so we'll see what happens here, but there's a lot of questions right now whether there actually is a ceasefire or not. It looks like for the past hour there has been.
Yeah, sure.
From looking at the timeline.
That was kind of my point earlier, in that you announce a ceasefire, and in this case, it's kind of ambiguous, the definition of ceasefire, because for you and I mean, or anybody who's has any experience being alive during a war, when you say ceasefire, that means people are at the table, that there was an actual agreement. But in this case, do you announce it knowing Iran doesn't really want to go further here, knowing that they really do, as the foreign minister posted? No, I mean, we're on board for de-escalation, and that's up to Israel. Well, while that is highly conditional, it is, again, a situation where if you put that out there, you just promote, ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. And then dare Iran, or just build in the contingency that if Iran does not abide, then all bets are off.
At least, this just in from CNN, at least 9 people were killed and dozens wounded in the Israeli strikes on residential buildings in northwest Iran early Tuesday local time. Iranian state media reported, citing a regional official. The attack wounded 33 people, destroyed 4 residential units. The deputy governor said, according to the state-affiliated media, no idea whether it's true or not.
Right.
There was a story, though, and a couple of stories, that Israel, this came out 12 minutes ago, last night was a nightmare. Residents of Iran's capital endure another night of Israeli strikes. That even though you had Iran shooting the missiles at Israel, Israel responded in force. And that's why, you and I look at this and you say, again, looking at all possibilities, okay, there's an agreement. Israel,
right.
Well, Trump said that both Iran and Israel wanted the ceasefire. He said they both wanted it. I don't see right now how Iran objects to taking out more of the offensive power of Iran. If Iran strikes back at them, it gives them the ability, because the table's been set. The president has said, we want peace, Israel wants peace. So far, the only one that we know that has broken the ceasefire early on was Iran. Mm-hmm. That gives you the opportunity to strike back, and strike back extremely strong, and probably more of an emphasis of let's take out whatever we can right now. Any offensive capability, more missile launchers. Let's really, really go after them, because we can justify it to the world, because we want peace.
Yeah. Right.
We talk about disinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Trump said, God bless Iran.
God bless Iran, yeah.
it was probably said in order to make them break the ceasefire. If you want to throw in the conspiracy theory angle at it,
if you want
Trump saying "God bless Iran," no way we go back to war again, and Trump's smiling, going, "All right, Israel, take out more of them."
Well, I mean, I think the problem that you have, that this theory has, I guess, is in that regard is that Israel really hasn't, Israel is looking at it, but you haven't heard one way or the other, we celebrate peace, blah, 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 in the way that President Trump did it yesterday. I don't expect it to be exactly in the same fashion as he does it, but the tone was just very different. And for me, it was like, well, that's because Israel doesn't trust Iran for 1 second. And you have, again, the foreign minister of Iran now saying in recent hours, there is no agreement, but we support de-escalation if Israel de-escalates. Well, now again, it just ultimately goes back to the beginning, and that is you cannot trust Iran on anything. But I think you bring up the good question, and that is who's in charge? Who's in charge? If there were, an agreement, I mean, I would assume it would be the foreign minister that would sign off on that. But who's actually in charge of giving the directives there in Iran? And someone there was one story early yesterday morning, Monday morning, that said that they're no one's heard from the Ayatollah, and I thought, well, that's because he's in hiding. But and you've diminished their internet, so in terms of posting, if he's still in Iran, I'm assuming he is, but you've diminished their ability to communicate to a large extent, and it could be just that communications are going to be limited because they don't have the infrastructure for communications, and you're just not going to see much or hear much from him in the meantime. But also the question, okay, could it be that, again, if you're at a point, keep in mind it was a couple of years ago that he put together, the Ayatollah himself put together a committee. He says, as I'm aging, my successors have to be named. And there was actually a story on that yesterday from Reuters. But again, you have to wonder who's in charge in Iran.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Leased owner-operators should be aware of 4 common revenue myths, lest you fall into the trap of mistaking revenue for profit. Myth 1, concentrate on increasing revenue because costs will take care of themselves. This is not true, as costs are fundamental to the profit equation and the area where owners exert the most control to improve. Myth 2, more revenue per mile is the answer to all problems. Though carrier pay packages differ in structure, revenue per mile really doesn't change much from company to company. But there can be a big difference in miles, overall gross revenue, reimbursements, and fees. Myth 3, all you have to do to be successful is run a lot of miles. In reality, revenue is only half of the profit equation. Costs are the other half. It's possible to generate a lot of revenue, yet spend $1.10 to make every dollar. Myth 4, you can tell how well you're doing by the size of your settlement check. The settlement check is only a part of the success picture. Miles driven, loads hauled, conditions, mechanical problems, time off, and especially costs all have to be considered. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just reading the timeline from the Jerusalem Post, and it's like, a phone call came after Trump told the emir of Qatar that Israel had agreed to the ceasefire and asked for their help in persuading Iran to also agree to the ceasefire deal. Reuters reported shortly after the prime minister secured the agreement from Iran to the U.S. proposal for a ceasefire during a call with Iranian officials that was held after Monday's attack that he got the agreement. And so, this actually comes and, Qatar's agreeing to it. We got their agreement, which makes me wonder, all right, who's in charge in Iran right now? And does it change by the hour? Who might have influence?
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. An hour and a half into the show, just trying to figure out whether the ceasefire is in effect or not. I would say that just from looking at the last hour and a half, that there haven't been hostilities for the last hour and a half.
CNN a few minutes ago, Israel said it agreed to ceasefire after tremendous success in Iran. Israel said it agreed to U.S. President Donald Trump's ceasefire proposal following its military success in Iran. In a statement on behalf of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, the statement, Israel's first official comments about the ceasefire, said Israel had achieved all of its objectives and far beyond after nearly 2 weeks of strikes on Iran. Quote, Israel has eliminated an immediate and dual existential threat, both in the nuclear domain and in the realm of ballistic missiles, end quote. Additionally, also a quote here, the IDF has achieved full aerial control over Tehran's skies, dealt a severe blow to the Iranian military leadership, and destroyed dozens of key regime targets in Iran, end quote. Israel will respond forcefully to any violation of the ceasefire. Again, this is being reported from CNN just 5 minutes ago.
We talk about the ceasefire. There is, just understand, it's a ceasefire. There is no deal for a peace agreement.
Right.
Where Iran has agreed to do anything. Right. But when you look at it, the Israel and the United States are stating that they got rid of the immediate threat. And that was their goal all along. That was definitely Trump's goal, as he had stated that his goal was not regime change. His goal was to not let Iran build a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
And if he's done that and this ceasefire holds, then he's accomplished what his goals are and what he said he was going to do. You and I have talked about the two differing factions in the Republican Party, the MAGA warmongers and the MAGA isolationists. And we said probably for the majority of people that really isn't true to have those type of labels, but those are the labels that have been created. We didn't create them. We're simply reporting them. And you and I have wondered whether it was Tucker Carlson or MTG, where in the world they ever got the opinion that Trump was an isolationist. We have no idea where they got it because he has never.
Yeah.
He has always said Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. And after what he did with Soleimani, he does things different. But if this ceasefire holds, and we're talking a week from now where the ceasefire still is holding, Trump did exactly what he set out to do and this is the incredible thing, from what I can see, got the approval of the world to do it.
Yeah, right.
That's what I think is unbelievably spectacular. Now, Democrats are going to hate it because they don't want to give him credit for anything.
Sure, right.
But it was interesting.
They're going to try and impeach him on the ceasefire deal. I mean, I'm only halfway joking.
For aiding and abetting the enemy.
Exactly. For saying God bless Iran. For two reasons there. Using the word God and also blessing Iran.
Why?
As they tried to defend Iran against Israel.
Because only Nazis would say that.
Exactly.
But, Gary, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
It doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to. They're all over the place.
But
yeah.
Trump accomplishes something. You know, I think it was Joe Scarborough. I think we'll find the audio cut. It just popped into my head where he said, well, you know, any Democrat president would have done the same. Oh, my God.
I'm sorry. What? What?
It was
really?
Like, oh, my.
Really?
Who knows what they would have.
Listen, Joe, and, forget you if you can't handle the truth, but that's not true. I did the G-rated version.
Well, but that it shows you where they're left right now.
Sure.
Anybody would have, it went from criticizing Trump to saying, well, any Democrat would have done the same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And probably most of Americans would say that are not afflicted with TDS.
Mm-hmm.
Advanced TDS, because somehow I saw it the other day. Stage 4 TDS now is where it has gone to.
Mm-hmm.
Would sit there and say, no, it's a good thing. He took out their nuclear capability. We're not in a war. There's no boots on the ground. There's a ceasefire. I always believed, we said this, and I believe you agree with me on this, that the goal always was from the United States to hit them so hard where there might be a possibility of regime change. What did I see the other day? That Israel doesn't think that there could be a worse government right now. We always say, well, it could be worse. Israel doesn't believe that it could be worse, which is why they wouldn't mind regime change. But I think the only regime change that probably Trump had in mind was, can we damage them so severely? Can we hit them so hard? Has Israel softening them up and then us doing what we have done devastated Iran so much that there might be a civilian uprising? Is that a possibility?
Well, yeah.
And if you get that, fine, but there's still the worry about a humanitarian crisis if something like this happens.
Sure.
And we said, so maybe it's like, well, let's let them, we do it, let it sit for a while. We get what we want out of it.
Yeah.
And then let Iran work it out themselves. I believe that probably was more of the Trump doctrine than anything else. And you could see it because I think there's a great anticipation in the White House right now. If we can pull this off, we've pulled off something that nobody else could pull off, which was we neutralized the threat of nuclear weapons from Iran, hopefully for a decade or so. We can only, because one of the arguments was, well, they could rebuild in 20 years. Yeah, and that's 20 years down the road. But
today.
You've taken care of what you've needed to take care of.
Exactly.
Today. And you've got most of the world, even if they're not outright complimenting you, they're not going after you.
And I'm also confident that President Barron Trump will take care of that in 20 years. I have no doubt in my mind that will happen. But that theory, which by the way works on so many levels, is very interesting because you think about this. All right, you get the Israelis on board, and it's like, hold off. Because the Iranian people, obviously, living in fear of being bombed. But then when silence takes over, when the dust starts to settle during a ceasefire, the focus by the Iranian people and anyone who would, I guess, lead an overthrowing of the Ayatollah goes from the war and the risks of war, the ultimate risk, of course, and Israel. The focus then changes to leadership, to what's going on, and you look at it then and say, you know what? It's quite possible that they look at it and say, much like we're seeing in the States where the people have been lied to over and over again, the Iranian people, or again, anybody who might be in a position that would be part of an overthrowing of the Ayatollah, looks at that and says, we never were a great power, and we are a greater nation without the Ayatollah. The focus, again, shifts from the war and Israel by those individuals and the Iranian people to their own leadership, and all eyes are on their leadership, and a true assessment of their leadership then is made. I think it's a very reasonable theory, because if their ability is diminished, and obviously Israel's not going to let their guard down, but if their ability is diminished, and the U.S. is going to maintain its presence in that region, and all eyes are there, and the pressure is on Iranian leadership, there is no greater pressure than domestic pressure, internal pressure. We said this about Russia. And when you have situations like that where the country doesn't, the people don't want the war. And we saw this with Russia attacking Ukraine. Well, the Russian people, the morale was never there to support that kind of war. They were asking, basically, why are we doing this? Well, in the case of the Iranian people, they want more freedom.
But the other thing with Russia is you're to the point where everyone knows somebody who is a casualty.
Yes,
or knows a family that's a casualty.
Exactly.
And that's
adding to that.
That's what you hope. Now, it hasn't worked where it's enough to overthrow Putin.
Right.
And who knows what you would get if you would overthrow Putin anyway. But you look at this, nobody, I don't know anyone that thought that war would not have been won by Russia by this time.
It was almost like it was assumed that it was going to be relatively quick in terms of Russia going into Ukraine and having that kind of control, and that didn't happen. And with Iran, the situation here, that the Iranian people, and again, anybody who might be in a position to overthrow the Ayatollah, fully understands now, you'll never win this. And certainly, after your greatly diminished nuclear ability, you have zero strength here. You can't win a war. You can lob missiles. That's all you can do. You have nothing.
Well, you can't win the war, and if you violate this agreement or pretend that it didn't happen, you give Israel carte blanche to go in.
Yeah, if you make one more move, it's over.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it from a strategic point of view, the smart move for Iran would be to say, we need a breather, agree to the ceasefire agreement, this regime stays in power, and there's a great chance that the Ayatollah would win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, this is very different than the mutually assured destruction in the case of internally there in Iran. It could be the self-assured destruction at this point, knowing, well, gosh, if leadership makes any more moves, we're done. The world is on Trump's side clearly now. You see all of the world leaders. We've been covering this for 2 straight days now, and our 3rd straight day since the bombing. And they are not coming out and criticizing Trump. They're talking in terms of Iran can't have nukes, knowing the risk of Iran getting nukes and all of this.
I couldn't believe Saudi Arabia's statement when Iran lobbed the missiles towards the U.S. airbase.
Right.
I was like, whoa, wow.
Yeah.
And again, they were getting universal criticism for it. And Trump now if this ceasefire holds, tomorrow, the next day, he's going to be called the great peacemaker.
Well, I mean, it really
And
is, again, this consensus, which goes back to building also that idea of self-assured destruction internally in Iran, of saying, oh, my gosh, if leadership does one more thing, we're done, and we will win nothing. And the Iranian people, for many years, have been wanting their freedom. You add all that together, and it does not look good for Iranian leadership in the Ayatollah.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Now, the thing is, I forgot when I found out about the ceasefire. I can't remember. I slept a couple times yesterday. But once I heard about the ceasefire with Trump and said, okay, if this thing holds, which it looks like for the last couple of hours it's holding, and Israel has come out and said, yes, we agree with this. Iranian state media, the crawl on the state media is there's a ceasefire,
right?
Even though the government's claiming that they've received nothing on it,
right?
But when I saw the left yesterday, and now thinking we're going to play some of the audio cuts, but it just doesn't matter anymore. They've lost this.
They really have lost this.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. What happened 1 year ago this week?
Yeah.
You ready?
All right, what do you got?
All right, here we go.
And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
That was the point. That was it.
It was the 27th.
It was that. That the
was
words
the moment,
you just heard from Joe Biden, it was that moment that the party goes, okay, yeah, we admit there's a problem. Someone calls Nancy. She was at the bar, and they said, hey, could you, give Joe a call and tell him it's done, it's over. Wow, that was the moment. Now, for us and people with eyes that are honest about what they see, we had known it long before that moment. But the party at that point pretty much went, there might be something wrong with Joe Biden. Remember what they tried to say, though, the next day. What was it? Well, it was late. He was tired. He didn't get his ice cream that day. They were making every excuse in the book, and it was a trend. And it's quite unfortunate because on the serious side of this, number one, it's a very dangerous situation to be in when the commander-in-chief has cognitive issues. But also, it was so easy to see for, again, anybody who wanted to be honest about it, many of us, millions of us, who are now adult caretakers, understand what cognitive issues look like. We know. And it was a great concern And think about the remedy for that. The remedy was not, we need to get together and decide who's going to run the country from this point. It was, okay, well, he can still sit in the chair, but he's not going to run, which was unacceptable, but they made it happen on the left.
Well, it all led to, where is it here? Here it is. This is sort of the back and forth. Yesterday, Attorney General Bondi and Representative Madeleine Dean of Pennsylvania, Democrat, going back and forth, leads right up to Biden's stuff. Here we go.
You want to talk about incompetence? You're the one that said Joe Biden on PBS was competent. You had to retract those words.
Mr.
Don't
Chairman,
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly.
this is so discourteous. This is so outside the committee's guidelines. Taking a personal shot at me while swiping at Biden.
Yeah. If you call her incompetent, you just opened up the door.
Yeah. Right.
But yesterday, well, first off, before we get to some of yesterday's reaction, because it just, all I could think of was, what do they say when somebody says something and it has no standing power? Oh, I forgot what's the term that is used all the time? Something like that didn't last long or whatever.
Didn't age well.
Didn't age well. Yes.
Right.
Didn't. There were a bunch of didn't age wells.
Much like me.
Yesterday. But first off, let's look at where we are right now, because Israel, by the way, opened up their airspace in the last 15 minutes. They just announced that they're opening up their airspace. So they must be confident, and I'm guessing the backdoor channels with Iran have been opened, because you haven't seen the president, with any late night post here. The last one was when he said the ceasefire's in effect. Nobody better break it.
Right.
And
he made another post about Jerome Powell, but I don't think it had anything to do with war. I don't think. Not that kind of war.
Now we're getting back to the economic numbers and things like that coming out later on this week. But the politically for this, let's start off first politically. Politically for this president, it's mind-boggling what has happened. This is going to drive, if the ceasefire holds, it's going to drive Democrats right up a wall, because it was like they were getting into forever wars, and boom. Trump is, and it fits precisely peace through strength.
Yeah.
Not peace through piecemeal attacks, but peace through strength, which is, no, we go after it. We tell them this is the red line. If they cross the red line, boom, it's over. And that's what happened. And it happened in a very, 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 very short time. And so politically here in the United States, number one, without question, this elevates Pete Hegseth, who was in trouble. I believe this saves his job.
It's a good point, because I had thought before this, and I didn't put the two thoughts together, but I had thought, even in recent weeks, I thought they're kind of biding their time on when to make the move. But I think right now he's probably on probation. When a boss puts somebody on probation, hey, we're going to keep a close eye on you. You're going to have to. So I tend to believe that was the case. And I think you're right. I think it's quite possible that this situation with dealing with Iran elevates him to a whole other level.
When you have a military action, which you probably could rate a 9.9 out of 10,
yeah,
or what the media knows, or what has been told to the media that nobody is debating, a 10, you get the credit for it. Hegseth will get the credit. Expect that the administration will be out promoting the great success that he has had. This thing, when you think about it, was Trump sold peace through strength, and he delivered peace through strength. Trump said, we're not going to be in a forever war. I don't want to be in a forever war. There's not going to be boots on the ground. And it looks like that's the situation. I don't see how boots get on the ground unless China decides to put attack Israel.
Yeah.
I don't, or Russia decides to attack Israel. I don't see boots on the ground of any American soldiers whatsoever. Even Tucker Carlson was eviscerated. Hundreds of thousands of lives will be lost. Blah 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 blah. He was eviscerated after the ceasefire deal was done. I have no idea where they are. Like I said, Tucker Carlson lost me a long time ago. I know a lot of people loved him. A lot of Republicans loved him. He almost got up to conservative media political idolatry.
Yeah.
Where whatever Tucker said was right, and we said no. And there were a couple of things that he has said that were way off yesterday. But where I said I was done with him completely, and we don't even talk about him much. But since he is such a huge personality in this debate going on between the so-called MAGA isolationists and the MAGA warmongers, is that he was completely off as to what was going to happen here as of right now. And again, we don't know what's going to happen next week or the week after, but right now, I don't see any possibility of American troops being on the ground. I don't see any possibility of a we're always going to be at war with Islamic radicalism. That's not going to change.
Right. Yeah.
And we just didn't, this war or conflict we've had with Iran goes back 46 years. This isn't new. And the response, because of the response of other countries to this, and the military action itself, and the fact of we have a ceasefire right after it, you don't see the kind of attacks that you would expect on the United States, internationally speaking. No matter what the UN may end up saying. Doesn't matter.
Right.
It's what is the reality, and the reality is they're not going to have a nuclear weapon in a year. They're not going to have it in 6 months. They're not going to have it in a month. They're not going to have it next week. Whatever the parameters were on it, or whatever the truth is of how close they are, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And it's that simple. And so you combine that, what has happened, because the United States involvement was hours. It may have been a 12-day war. The United States direct involvement was 32 hours?
36, yeah.
36 hours? And actually just being in there from the attack to finishing the attack was like 25 minutes. That was it.
Yeah. And inside of Iranian airspace, it was a matter of minutes.
Yep. And so there it is. Well, I mean, inside the Iranian airspace was more than minutes, but the actual from dropping the first bomb to the last cruise missiles hit was about 25 minutes. But they had to go in and come back out again, so probably was over an hour or so to get through the airspace of Iran. But it was universally across the board, from military experts, from intellectually honest Democrats saying, this is a good thing. Wow, this is really surprising. Wow, the military really worked here. My God, they kept everything really secret. And I think the secret thing is so important for Hegseth, because I don't care what anybody says, you can't defend Hegseth, what he did on that app. And when he said nothing classified was put out, that was a line of horse manure, absolute horse manure. Of course it was classified when that happened back then, because you get into any type of conflict, whatever it comes out is assumed to be classified. And it didn't do any harm, but he was throwing out a load of horse manure, and the administration even knew it. But I believe this completely rights any type of wrong that happened there. This strengthens Trump like you can't believe. His legacy, as we've said, this will be his legacy. Because now Trump, we all know what he's probably going to do. Now we need to get more Abraham Accords with Israel. We need to get Saudi Arabia and Israel at the table. We can do this. And Trump, if he can pull that off in itself, I'm not saying there's not going to be skirmishes that come up in the Middle East, because there are. And I'm not saying Israel's not going to be attacked, because they are. But the fact is, there is a change happening in the Middle East, and you can point right at Trump and say, he's the guy. He's the guy. I was, by the way, don't anybody get on my case. I was kidding before when I said the positives for Iran is that if they agree to the ceasefire, the Ayatollah can stay in power and he can win the Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, I was being sarcastic as to that's probably what they would do, because you can't give it to Trump, right?
Yeah, well, the Nobel Committee. Yeah, that's, I mean,
yeah, the Nobel
that'd be right in their, based on their history, it wouldn't shock me.
Right, and so what they'd say is, well, we're going to give the Nobel Peace Prize to the Ayatollah because he only broke the ceasefire for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But Trump, honestly, if this all works out and he can get Israel and Saudi Arabia at the table, because Saudi Arabia has given indications they want to improve relations and they'd be willing to do some type of Abraham Accord with Israel. If he does that, it's one of the greatest moments of a president of the United States actually bringing peace through strength, exactly what his motto is.
Yeah.
And the American people look at this and go, well, yeah, this is what we need to do. The threat is gone. And he's not using it. He's not using it to become an imperialistic Hitler. He's using it to bring people to the bargaining table in the Middle East. And we can't also forget that Trump's push for fossil fuels in the United States and the explosion of oil and natural gas in this country isn't responsible, for the fact that more governments in the Middle East look and see their future and say, well, we've got to diversify our economies because we don't own the oil markets anymore.
Right.
And that's huge. And so if Trump can do this, he is one president that absolutely deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for this.
Right.
I don't want to jump the gun on it because you never know, but from what he has done already, he deserves to get it.
The finance minister for Israel saying in the last hour or so, this is the finance minister from Israel saying basically now, after the ceasefire with Iran, we've accomplished what we want to accomplish. Now we need to complete the task in Gaza. And I thought to myself, well, what's interesting here is that knowing there's no question now about who Hamas is. That's another thing that this does, is it completely resets the table on Gaza. And Hamas, when he says complete the task in Gaza, I wonder how much Hamas has available to them. There was a story the other day about Iran's proxies and why they've been so quiet, because they've been hit hard. Their leaders have been taken out. But how much is left from Hamas to be able to do anything? And can Israel accomplish their goals in Gaza? And is it easier as a result of what's happened with Iran? I have to believe it is. Iran funds it all.
It gives more clout to the president and Netanyahu being involved.
Yep.
Based on how they sold.
Yep.
This 12-day war.
Right. Exactly.
With Iran. We'll talk more coming up. 866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. What was I just looking at? Oh, yeah, the
markets.
Oil prices down to 66.03.
A little while ago, down to 64 and change. So the question is, what do the markets think is going to happen with this peace deal? Yesterday, the markets were up. Oil was down. But compare that to where oil has been in recent days. Not massive increases like we talked about this yesterday. You would have seen 30 years ago a huge jump in oil prices. If this at this level, the U.S. bombing Iran had happened 30 years ago, my gosh, oil prices through the roof. But now you have oil prices down again, 65 and change, just below 66 a barrel. You have the Dow futures up almost a full percent, S&P up 1%, and the Nasdaq up in Nasdaq futures. These are futures up 1.3%. So the market at this moment believes that the ceasefire is going to hold. So I guess we'll see.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. All right, let's hear from former Secretary of State John Kerry before the ceasefire was announced. I may be a little bit of torture, but it'll be worth it in the long run, right?
By the way, the IDF is reporting in just a few seconds ago on social media, sirens sounding in northern Israel due to missile fire from Iran. That was just a few seconds ago.
Whoa.
We'll be following this here throughout the morning again. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Israel has said the ceasefire is in effect. You have Iran saying now they're saying something different on their state media, which was saying earlier that the ceasefire was going into effect. The government, you had members of the government, whoever the government is at this moment
in Iran,
is stating we never did any written type of ceasefire at all. Qatar disagrees with that, says no, we got the agreement from Iranian officials. Who are those Iranian officials? Do they still have any power would be the question. But here's John Kerry yesterday. Here we go.
I do think people have to be realistic here in understanding what the choices are. Iran is a proud nation. One of the things I learned in my negotiations was the level of pride was just enormous. They also have been committed to the destruction of Israel. That's a cultural, almost religious component of their policy. And so it's very hard to say what exactly is going to bring them back to the table. But I know this. You cannot bomb away the memory of how to make a bomb. You can't bomb away the knowledge that they have developed. You can't bomb away the broad array of technicians who've been working on this for years, who will go back to work if that's the mission they're given by the leadership of the country. And one of the dangers here is that the more this goes on in a military way, the more power goes to the worst offenders within Iran, the IRGC. And that's not good for anybody.
Interesting. because as we know, the leadership, the majority of the top leadership of the military is dead.
Well, and he says you can't bomb away, and he in part lines out the people that are part of the process. Actually, you can also bomb away I wouldn't phrase it that way. You can diminish or deplete completely the will to do it. But the goal would be to bomb away the immediate threat.
Right.
That's the goal. And then from there, you never let your guard down. By the way, speaking of which, I just mentioned that the sirens, IDF reported that sirens are going off in northern Israel, but also the IDF says there is no changes to home front guidelines for civilians. There is still a danger because there had been conflicting reports as to whether or not civilians were okay to not stay near bomb shelters. And then there was one report that said, okay, that's not the case. But again, this comes from the Times of Israel just minutes ago. Currently, there are no changes to guidelines for civilians as the ceasefire between Israel and Iran takes effect, according to the IDF. You must continue to follow the guidelines. There is still a danger. But now, again, with sirens going off there in northern Israel, as they've detected a new launch of ballistic missiles from Iran, it's clear that this is not over, which, again, you have to wonder how far Iran wants to take this, I guess. And I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't, because they don't have the power to win over Israel, and they certainly don't have the power to win over the U.S.
Well, I think with Trump announcing it yesterday and Israel agreeing to the ceasefire, and Iran really needing a ceasefire, because if they want to reload, if that is their goal, even if Israel won't let them to, you have a better chance. The odds are greater if you say, okay, we'll agree to the ceasefire, even if you don't.
Yeah.
It gives you some breathing room. So the fact that they're not, and if there's, because I'm reading here from the Jerusalem Post, sirens expected in northern Israel. Sirens are expected to sound in Israel's north. Home Front Command announced on Tuesday. That's all they had. You had the fact that from the Times of Israel that and
the IDF, and social media,
right.
Sirens sounding in northern Israel due to missile fire from Iran, is the direct quote from the IDF social media.
Because the response from the world to the ceasefire has been so huge that whoever breaks it, with Iran breaking it, well, then you've just given Israel the attempt to, if they bomb you, you hit them 100 times harder.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the ones that broke the ceasefire after agreeing to it.
Right.
Again, we don't know who's in charge over there, but Qatar has said, no, they agreed to it.
Also, the IDF, there was a press conference, actually, and this came out a few minutes ago from that press conference. The IDF jets hit dozens of Iranian military targets in Tehran overnight. They don't give specifics as to whether this was before the ceasefire deadline or after, dropping over 100 munitions. That's according to the IDF. He says or a spokesman at the IDF. The spokesman says strikes against targeted the headquarters against Iran targeted. My page just refreshed. Sorry about that. Certain nuke sites there in the headquarters of the SPND nuclear project is where it is, and weapons production sites in the Iranian capital. So, again, dropping munitions
that fits a story
in Tehran.
That could be the same. I'm not sure, but that might be the same story that we read before about, where it's like in Tehran, you had whoever was doing the interview, and I believe it was CNN, saying that all hell's breaking loose from the bombing of Israel earlier.
Yeah,
but I believe that was all before the ceasefire.
It sounds like it is, and it's only fresh here from Times of Israel and a couple of other sources because of the press conference that was. They're actually just talking about it now. And this same IDF spokesman says, in western Iran, we detected preparations for a barrage at Israel, and we worked to thwart and disrupt the threat.
Yeah, here's the one. Last night was a nightmare. Residents of Iran's capital endure another night of Israeli strikes.
Mm-hmm.
Residents of the Iranian, this is from an hour and 38 minutes ago. Residents of the Iranian capital describe a terrifying night Tuesday after Israel launched fresh attacks on Tehran, even as word spread about a possible ceasefire. The past 24 hours have been terrifying. A 29-year-old a resident told CNN, I haven't wanted to leave Tehran and leave my city until yesterday. Yesterday I decided I would leave. Israel launched multiple attacks on different areas of Tehran. The Iran state-aligned Tasman news agency reported Tuesday local time. Before that, Israel issued evacuation warnings for several neighborhoods in the capital. Another resident, a 32-year-old woman, said last night was a nightmare. The explosions felt as if they were coming from everywhere. And like I said, they have given, if there are more missiles being shot at Iran, you have given the Israelis permission now, in essence, worldwide permission to do so, because Qatar will tell you the Iranians agreed to a ceasefire. They told Trump. Trump went to Israel. Israel said, we agree with the ceasefire. So you've got the United States, Israel agreeing with the ceasefire. And it looks to the world like Iran agreed to it, then backed off.
Yeah.
And at that point, if that's how you can sell this because it's the truth, you give Israel just a huge license to, they hit us, we hit them 100 times harder. What does it matter? They're breaking the ceasefire.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll see here if it's just going to be this back and forth, and that it's clear as of right now, so far the ceasefire hasn't truly materialized. And so now you wait to see if it ever will.
There it is, just a couple of minutes ago from CNN. Israel identifies incoming barrage of missiles from Iran. CNN reporting it. The Israeli military says it's identified an incoming barrage of missiles from Iran into northern Israel. The military said earlier on Tuesday that the ceasefire with Iran went into effect this morning. Let me just see. We just got another update in here. Oh, okay. Just oil prices tumble on the news of the ceasefire deal.
Right.
Okay, I've got to check real quickly.
Still around 66 and change on the oil markets, down a couple of dollars a barrel. So we'll see what the back and forth is going to be, how extensive this round, I guess, may be, because so far there is no ceasefire. You can't make the case.
No. We had said it looked like it had gone on for a couple of hours, but this and that breaking news you just gave us means that there is no ceasefire.
Right.
How would the United States respond, or will they just say, we're not going to respond, Israel, you do it?
Yeah, could be. Right.
Yeah.
And
the president doesn't have to touch mine. Well, look, they've been fighting. We got rid of the nuclear threat. Israel can take care of the rest, which is probably true.
Now, with their diminished ability to attack Israel, to attack any interest, the only thing you're monitoring now, if you're the U.S., is U.S. bases and interests in that region. That's really beyond the bombing.
Oh,
that was it to begin with.
And did you see the headlines yesterday? I saw one on CNBC that says Iran hit U.S. military base. No, they did.
No, they didn't hit it.
They didn't hit it, but they
they didn't land any.
They used the word hit
right
in the headline. I'm like, no, they didn't.
No, they didn't. And there's an important distinction. And, it's, I don't know. It's happening so quickly, and you and I have been doing this for a long time, but it's happening so quickly right now. When there's something that hits like that, you don't know what's accurate and what's not in the moment because everything is moving so quickly. But that didn't materialize. They didn't land anything on that base in Qatar at all. In fact, at one point, there was a comment from one official in Qatar that said, if we need to, we'll defend ourselves from Iran. I guess somebody asked the pointed question. Now, Iranian officials had said, this is going to be aimed strictly at, the word was, they sent word to Qatar, this is strictly at the American base. This will not be at our friend Qatar kind of approach there. But Qatar was saying, well, we'll defend ourselves if we need to. And, of course, it didn't materialize because they didn't land, and the U.S. decided not to retaliate. So, here we are. We'll be watching this throughout the morning as things continue to develop between Iran and Israel.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. The breaking news just from a few minutes ago, looks like the ceasefire did not stick as missiles have been launched at northern Israel after Netanyahu said Israel agrees to the Iran ceasefire. The IDF says it's a barrage of missiles heading towards northern Israel. So that would mean that the ceasefire has already been broken by Iran, that Qatar said earlier had agreed to it.
Right.
So,
yeah,
we'll have more coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. I'm reading this from the Times of Israel. Iran breaks ceasefire with ballistic missile attack. I was looking at the CNN headline that had it in quotes, that a military official said there was a barrage of missiles heading towards northern Israel. That was from CNN. Times of Israel from 21 minutes ago. At least one ballistic missile launched from Iran at Israel as Iran breaks the ceasefire. Then it was IDF says civilians in northern Israel can exit bomb shelters after Iranian missile fire. The IDF had said that they had taken down one missile. So, again...
Well, and now you've got the defense minister... Katz says he has instructed the IDF to respond forcefully to Iran's violation of the ceasefire with intense strikes against the regime targets in the heart of Tehran. That's from just several minutes ago, reported by Jerusalem Post and Times of Israel. So there is no ceasefire. It's not happening. Not yet. And when it was announced yesterday, I thought to myself, well, does anyone fully trust Iran? You don't. There's no way you can. So now you're going to be in this back and forth situation where, again, the IDF, they're going to go after more targets in Tehran. And look, we're talking about right there in the heart of, a massive, massive city. Well, then Iran is going to launch more missiles. The question is, where are they in terms of Iran's ability to retaliate? We know it's limited now to missiles. It's believed. So now what? Israel can just keep working away at Iran until, and I don't know to what end. Because I don't see them going to the table with Israel. And, a regime turnover, that's, we say it, but if you think about what it would take to overthrow the Ayatollah, that's not a small thing. So then the question would be the other way: the Ayatollah is no longer there, as if he's killed. The point they made in one story by Reuters in recent hours was that, what they would likely do is move to basically put in place a new Ayatollah the moment he is no longer there, like they did with military leaders when they were killed. But the hopes would be, I guess, from Israel, if you're looking to take the Ayatollah out and leadership out, you take a large group of them out, including those that have been prospective, I guess, successors to the Ayatollah, who, by the way, a couple of years ago started talking about this. He's 86, and he started talking about who would be the next leader. And they were looking and what it would require and everything else. So there's certainly a short list out there, and Israel, no doubt, has that list. And if you're going to go after leadership, you're going to go after all of it.
So from the Jerusalem Post, missiles fired from Iran triggered sirens throughout northern Israel on Tuesday morning, the IDF announced. The IDF was able to intercept a missile during the strike. Now, you heard that in the first sentence, you heard me say plurals, missiles. There was an earlier statement that CNN broadcast from a senior military official that there was a barrage.
Yeah,
Well, so we've heard a barrage, but one missile was shut down, and there's no reports of casualties or wounded, and residents of the north have been told that they are permitted to leave their shelters by the Home Front Command. The strike from Iran came after the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, stated that Israel had agreed to the ceasefire with Iran after achieving all war goals. We had told you earlier that it was just a couple of minutes into the ceasefire when, and this goes back hours ago, where Iran fired missiles, and then all went quiet for a couple of hours, and we said, okay, maybe the ceasefire has taken hold, and then this, and Israel to launch, as you just said, the defense minister said, Israel to launch an intense attacks now on Tehran in response to Iran's ceasefire violation. And this is, again, where you look at this and you say to yourself, the minds that you're dealing with, you're not dealing with critical thinking minds, though, many times here when you talk about the Ayatollah or the mullahs or whoever is in charge right now, because you would think that at this moment you'd say, we know what the United States will do. If we want, we should take a breather here and see if we can start getting more rocket launchers in or doing whatever. But this isn't working for us. It hasn't worked for them the last 12 days. Their military potential has been degraded at least probably 60 to 70%.
Yeah. I think that's a safe bet.
That's a safe bet. And their their military leadership has been wiped out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
right.
So when you look at this, you just say to yourself, where do they go?
Well,
where do they go from this point on?
The latest missile launch that triggered the sirens going off in northern Israel. Again, as you point out, the first report was missiles, plural, detected, and now we intercepted one. The point would be, my question would be, based on that, is you've greatly diminished their ability. Are they just running out? Are they just almost to the end of what they have? And I have no idea.
Well, we were told a couple of days ago that they still had plenty of missiles. They just didn't have the rocket launching systems.
Right, yes.
Because every time you fire a rocket, remember, as they were saying, they might not have over the last couple of hours, but when this was going on a couple of days ago, even before the United States decided to take out the 3 nuclear sites, that Israel had drones. They had complete air superiority right over Tehran.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at it and you say, all right, you don't have anti-aircraft, you don't have missiles, you don't have, what do you have to fight back against the Israelis? One of the things that's been brought up is that Russia does not have airspace control over Ukraine.
Right.
And it just took a matter of days for Israel, with the help of the United States, to get it completely over Iran. So you have to look at it and you say, what's the best thing? Look, terrorist regimes and terrorists have done it before. All right, we're alive. We can't win this one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back and let's rest. Let's reload. Let's do whatever. But let's not, if we don't cause any trouble, they won't cause any trouble.
Right.
Because they'll abide by the ceasefire. And when we decide to break it again, we'll be more well-armed to do so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have no doubt that if they get the opportunity, they would break any type of agreement or ceasefire.
Oh, yeah.
This is really interesting, though. This is worth reading. This had come out earlier today. Hours after Israel began Operation Rising Lion, Israeli intelligence operatives began an intimidation campaign against some of Iran's senior officials, the Washington Post reported, citing 3 people familiar with the operation. Persian speakers allegedly working for Israel's security service called senior Iranian officials and told them they would be targeted for assassination if they failed to discontinue support for the Ayatollah. It is estimated that around 20 of these high-level officials were targeted. In one recording obtained by the Washington Post, an Israeli intelligence official reportedly told a senior Iranian general, quote, I can advise you now, you have 12 hours to escape with your life or with your wife and your child.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're on our list right now. We're closer to you than your own neck vein. Put this in your head. May God protect you, end of quote.
Wow.
That general reportedly survived the war, though Israeli operatives claimed the others targeted did not. Israeli security officials have said that these phone calls were part of a broad covert action campaign against Iran, in addition to the military attacks on nuclear sites, weapon production facilities, and missile launchers. In the initial hours of the attack on Iran, the IDF successfully targeted and killed several top officials. In one phone call, the Israeli intelligence official mentioned the previous assassinations. I'll explain it to you. Listen carefully. I'm calling from a country that 2 hours ago sent Bagheri, Salami, and Shamkhani one by one to hell, quoted the Washington Post. The campaign was meant to intimidate Iran's second and third tier leadership, aimed to create fear among those who had not been struck in the initial round of Israeli attacks and to prevent the Ayatollah from filling any key positions, the Washington Post reported. The second-tier leadership that is supposed to inherit the positions and now fill the places of those who have been eliminated, they are terrified, one Israeli security official explained. And that's what's going on right now. And you and I asked, and it could be a totally legitimate question. It's definitely a question. It could be legit. And that is, Qatar was talking to Iranian officials. Are those Iranian officials that are making decisions? They have been so depleted in their military leadership, as we were told, the Ayatollah didn't answer.
Right.
The phone. They wanted to see if they could work out one final thing with him. He not answering the phone, and you and I talked about this. Would you answer any phone, or would you have any beeper or any type of electronic equipment put near your body right now if you're the Ayatollah?
No. Well, a couple of things there, especially after the pager attacks on Hezbollah. But then beyond that, the ability of Mossad to monitor calls and then zero in on your location. You know, he's 86 years old, but he's not using a landline. So I wouldn't want to pick up any device that I wouldn't want any devices near me at all if you're in that situation.
Some Iranian officials received warnings via letters left at their doors, while others were contacted directly by phone or through their spouses. They fully understand that they are transparent and known to us, and that our intelligence penetration is 100%, said one Israeli source. Wow. Just happened to see that article. I didn't see it in the Washington Post yesterday, but saw the Jerusalem Post reprint of the story.
Where did I see that? Someone else did a story launched off of the Washington Post story. I think the Wall Street Journal. I'll have to double check. But basically, it was because telling that top general, you've got 12 hours. I'd say this, too, in terms of there's been discussion about Iran, right? If they say they want to, if they say death to America, believe them. If they say they want to wipe Israel off the map, believe them. If the Mossad tells you you've got 12 hours, you should believe them. While that general did survive, others didn't. And I don't know that I would trust anything right now. If your leadership in Iran, I don't know what you trust, and you have no power. You've got the limited ability still to strike Israel, and you've already proven you probably aren't going to go after American interests. Of course, that could change depending on where this goes, but based on the attack on, or the, I don't know, attempted attack, the lobbing of missiles towards the base in Qatar, they really look weakened right now, and I just wonder how long this goes on and how long leadership is actually going to be in place in Iran. And as we've been saying all morning, who's in charge?
Yep. But there is no ceasefire as of this moment.
No, it has not happened yet.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. Looking at so many different news sources. By the way, the ceasefire is not on.
Yeah.
Just so people know.
Right.
We'll start out with that one. And we've been going through a ton of different news sources, from the Times of Israel to the Jerusalem Post to the straight from the IDF. In Israel, the Twitter, the X sites also looked at reports from the Washington Post, CNN, Fox Online, and a bunch of other, wherever we can get the information from is where we're getting it from to you, just so you know where our sources are. This from the Times of Israel. Lawmakers call for retaliation against Tehran after Iran violated the newly announced ceasefire, launching a ballistic missile at northern Israel. So this one says, and we've been, and this is going to happen, by the way, when you're reporting on a war almost in real time.
Yeah.
You're going to get things that at times don't make sense.
Right.
Because initially a defense official told CNN that it was a missile barrage. Right. And then we heard, well, they took down one missile and then told people they can come out of their shelters. Mm-hmm. And now this article says lawmakers calling for retaliation after Tehran, or against Tehran, after Iran violated the newly announced ceasefire, launching a ballistic missile at Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. Tehran will tremble, said the finance minister Smotrich, a member of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's security cabinet. Quiet will be answered with quiet. Missiles will be answered with, and then a question mark.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Said another lawmaker. We'll have more coming up. But the ceasefire didn't last long. Probably, an hour and a half, 2 hours?
Yeah, if that.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. Interesting night. Going to have to back up all these other topics not relating to the ceasefire, probably till tomorrow's show, because... Yeah. The ceasefire, which was supposed to take place really around when we got on the air, about an hour before we got on the air in Israel, really never took place. A couple of minutes after the ceasefire was supposed to go into effect, you had Iran shoot missiles at Israel, and then everything went quiet.
Right.
And then Israel announced that we agreed with the ceasefire because the President Trump had announced that they had agreed. They hadn't. And then, remember, they're in a different time zone than we are here. But when the morning came, or Tuesday morning, earlier, they agreed to it. And within an hour, we've heard a barrage. We've heard one. We've now heard two ballistic missiles were shot into northern Israel. So the ceasefire, without question, is over.
If it ever was in
If it was
place
ever-
to begin with. I mean, it seemed like basically each side was just regrouping and responding to each other. The IDF chief of staff a few minutes ago said that in light of the grave violation of the ceasefire by the Iranian regime, we will strike with force. And that's something, again, we heard earlier as officials there in Israel basically calling on, in fact, it was Defense Minister Katz who said he instructed the IDF to respond forcefully to Iran's violation of the ceasefire with intense strikes against regime targets in the heart of Tehran. So if it was ever in place, I don't know when that would be, but it was certainly short-lived, but it is not in place now in terms of the ceasefire. And which means, again, it will be measured in terms of what Iran's response is and also what targets they may be hitting, Israel may be hitting there in Tehran, if they're targeting these regime targets. The question would be, all right, are these other missile sites? What would they be? Are they targeting the regime itself?
You know, the interesting thing is looking at CNBC and looking at the futures market and oil.
Mm-hmm.
Oil's still down. Because this happened, it doesn't seem like it's shaking up the markets at all. I think that the markets are convinced that even if Iran does strike back,
It won't be much.
It's not going to be much. They can't do anything.
They can't control it. It appears the market believes, at least at this moment. I think you're right. We started to see that turn, and also the, I guess, lack of massive impact that could have been in play 30 years ago on not just the oil markets but also the stock markets here in the U.S. It seemed that the market believed that that Iran was limited in what they were going to be able to do, but I think right now they believe it's really not going to disrupt supply. There's no reason to believe it in this moment. That could change, but it was as high as oil in recent days was as high as $10 a barrel more than where it is right now at just over $66 a barrel. But again, that could change. Here's from CNBC.com, a related story they have as I'm looking at the charts on oil. A confusing ceasefire forged by missile attacks. Well, I don't know that it's confusing. The reports may be back and forth, but if you understand the nature of the situation, the question is how much trust did you put in an actual ceasefire? And really, that's targeted toward Iran. How much did you actually believe about a true ceasefire? I didn't have much confidence in it, unless there was an announcement that the president was very confident yesterday, and I thought, well, I'm not confident, but unless we're talking about the regime being gone and, that kind of thing, that would be, okay, well, then the war is over. But at this point, it's not a ceasefire, and I don't know if there would be one in the coming days.
I don't see that that Trump at all jumped the gun or was overly enthusiastic. I think because
I don't detect that either.
Because I think he heard from when the air base was attacked, he heard through the back channels, the communication channels, that Iran gave him a warning. He goes, "Hey, thanks, bud. Thanks for that. Appreciate it."
That they heard through the back channels, it was being reported right after that attack yesterday, by the way, that Iran was looking to de-escalate. They really did not want to continue.
Right. And this was really done through the prime minister and the emir of Qatar. They're the ones that did this. I mean, and so this wasn't, the president was looking to do this, and he was discussing that with them a couple of days ago, but they're the ones who actually communicated with the Iran officials. Now, I think we've asked a legitimate question here, And I'm assuming that the CIA would know a lot more than we know on this one.
Yeah, sure.
But who's in charge right now? They're all scared to death. They're afraid to answer their phone.
Yeah.
They're afraid to be near any type of electronical equipment right now over in Iran, any type of senior leadership. So who is making the calls? Who is making the calls to fire off the missiles? And are they the same people that agreed with the officials from Qatar to have a ceasefire? I think there's a lot of questions going on when you read the psyops that were done here, and that all the, the second and third generation leaders, down in the ranks that would be moving up and taking over in 5 years or 10 years, they've all been intimidated and threatened by the Mossad already. We read you that story last hour. So you have no idea what's going on in that country, whether those officials that spoke for Iran and said, yes, we agree to the ceasefire, whether they're in power anymore, whether they had the power to make that particular deal. And that's, I think, some of the challenges you're going to have in any type of ceasefire agreement like this. But I don't see this. It was like how ridiculous the world didn't buy it. We shoot some missiles and warn them that we're shooting missiles because we need to show some kind of response. Talk about symbolism over substance. All right, we need to have the symbolism that we're firing back, but tell them we're going to fire back so they can locate the missiles and destroy them early because we don't want to hurt anybody, because we don't want to be attacked. Well, then why are you attacking Israel now? Right. And that's what I'm wondering. Does the right hand not know what the left hand is doing?
Right.
Because now you've given permission for Israel to come in and not be proportional in their response.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Because the entire world was celebrating yesterday. I really thought if Trump went down to the UN, they'd put Trump on their shoulders and carry him around.
Hip, hip, hooray!
All right, maybe I'm going a little bit too far.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
As I said earlier, though, this is such an incredible moment that the Nobel Peace Prize might be given to the Ayatollah. That's still my favorite line, though. I still love that line. That's because it's like that's the way it would go. Well, yeah. Well, Trump should get it. Well, no. The Ayatollah eventually agreed to the ceasefire, so he was trying to de-escalate where Trump was trying to escalate. By the way, that debate was being had yesterday. It's like, and you look at it right now, it doesn't matter even that the ceasefire has been broken. This thing's been de-escalated big time.
Yeah.
You and I, we all know it.
Yeah.
And they may shoot a missile here and there,
well,
but this thing is over.
And I think that's what the market sees is that, at least in the moment, that Iran really doesn't have much power to do anything now. I mean, the missiles aren't nothing, but they certainly aren't the threat that they would have been with nuclear capability. And so now it's because then you have to wonder about their ability or their will to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz, because we talked about it, I think, briefly yesterday, I think it was, that's where China gets a lot of its oil. I mean, it has to move through Hormuz. They don't buy just from Iran, but other nations in that region, and it all comes through there. And Iran is friends with China, so you're going to disrupt supply to China.
I read,
and how much are you going to actually be able to do before that pressure is there, or how much logistically can you do? Because again, you have nothing to fight with. I don't know.
I read an analysis that they could block it, they could do a blockade, but then their Navy's gone.
Right.
Because once they attempt to do that, the U.S. would be involved again, and that was the point that was being made in an article that I read yesterday. Well, they could do it, and they could probably lay down some mines. The United States could clear the mines very quickly with our minesweepers, but they risk losing their entire Navy. Because at that point, you're like, all right, that was a threat over here. Now you're a threat over here. We're not going to make it proportional. And I think that's the license that Israel has now. And if they attempted to block the strait,
right,
the United States does not have to be proportional. You know, you notice how that's gone right now? Nobody's talking about proportionality. Well, okay, now that I brought it up, the Democrats are like, doggone it, we forgot to talk about that the last couple of days.
Yeah,
proportionality.
Wait for it.
What happened to that?
Yeah. Chuck and Adam Schiff and probably John Kerry again will be out there and using that. Way to go, Gary. But no, you're right.
Well, it's not going to work.
No,
I mean, they can try it.
Never worked, but
Don't thank me too much.
Exactly. And that's I think, again, we talked about, we went through, yesterday you had it kind of lined up, the international response. And it is not the wagging the finger at Trump that you have typically seen from a lot of nations in other situations. And in a situation like this, it easily could have been like the pro-Hamas rally type individuals internationally, right? That, Israel needs to stand down and everything else. It was, nope, Iran cannot have these weapons. And part of that is because, a big part of that is because some of these nations are within Iran's reach. And that's a problem, was going to be a problem. And they may not say it out loud, but they're likely grateful that the U.S. took this measure this past weekend to make sure that the world is safer. It's not just Israel and the U.S.
This is a great question from Steve. How many Iranian leaders have the Israelis flipped in their 12 hours to live contact mission? I don't know. One article I read said they don't know of any who had flipped at the moment. Well, I don't know how that would be public news.
Right, yeah.
that would get out that quickly.
Sure.
If you did it. But that's a great question. It's also a great question of how many are going to do their best not to communicate with other leadership, which, by the way, at this point would not be something unusual.
No, in the state that they're in, that's a good point.
Because any communications you have, the United States and Israel are monitoring.
Right.
For the most part.
Right.
And you don't want them
to get It would almost be expected protocol, if it's not already official protocol, to lay low.
But that is a good question, Steve. I don't know, but that's a great question. 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Why? Because our show ends in an hour, and we record our show. And after the show is done in an hour, it becomes our podcast. It's that simple. So you can listen on our Red Eye Radio app. And if for some reason you can't listen on one of our great radio stations overnight, which, of course, is the preferred way, then you can listen on our app because we stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app. Coming up following the top of the hour, the latest on Iran breaking the ceasefire. Interesting article that I was reading in Breitbart yesterday. Trump boxes Iran in at the United Nations Security Council. Really interesting article. It makes a great point, too.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.